Hello, everybody. This is The Local Lens, a podcast where we go inside one community's experience with the drug epidemic. This is coming from Stanton, Kentucky, a small town nestled at the foothills of Appalachia. So today I had the great opportunity to sit down with a family and explore the family dynamics of what addiction looks like. We have Miss Ronna Donithan along with her nephew Joshua Jones. Now, of course, we're going to let them tell their whole story and fledge out some of the different parts of their relationship, what some of the struggles have been from that family perspective. We hope you listen closely to what these guys are saying because they're sharing some very personal details and also very helpful details on what it's like to be in addiction and what it's like to see somebody that you love inside of that fight. Josh's experience has been quite full circle, where he went through the addiction and now he's turned around and he's in service to other people around him. So this project is being sponsored by the Powell County Health Department and Powell County Cares, which is this huge program where we're trying to do a lot to lower overdoses in our community. Well, that's good enough for an intro. Let's go on and get into the episode. I'm your host, Nate Brooks, and you're listening to The Local Lens. Thanks for tuning in.
I'm Joshua Jones, born and raised in Clay City.
And my name is Ronna Donithan. I'm from here in Clay City as well, lived here all my life, and I am Josh's aunt.
And Josh, you've been on a journey, right?
You could say that, yeah.
Which has put us all on a journey.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's open up here real quick. So you guys both in Clay City, what did you guys see the opioid problem as being?
We have been out of town, and when we rode back in yesterday, I had to go to the grocery store, of course, because we were out of groceries, and my 13-year-old daughter says, well, it's back to druggy land. I said, do what? And she goes, it's amazing how when you're somewhere else, you don't see it as much as you do when you're here. And it's not, I don't know if it's where you don't acknowledge it when you're somewhere else, and it's where you're at home. You notice it more because that's your hometown. But for her to say that at her age, I was like, wow. And, you know, it's a problem if she notices it. So
It was always frustrating for me, like especially by the time I got to high school. Like by the time you're in high school, everybody's like, oh, this place sucks. This is the worst place. I can't wait to get out of here. And people act like everywhere else is better than it is here. And I firmly believe that that's not quite true. Like to a degree, like I think everywhere has their fair share of problems. We're just fortunate enough to see all of them in up close personal detail here.
yeah.
That's true.
And like I said, you look at it more because it's your hometown. It's because I mean, when you focus on your hometown, you want it to be better than what it is everywhere else. So you notice it a little more.
And there's more familiar faces.
Yeah.
Joys of a small town.
Yeah. So Josh, then, how old were you when you started using then? Do you remember?
Like when I took my first drink, I was young. I mean, I can remember being like 3 or 4 years old and grabbing my grandfather's cup of Maker's Mark and L8 and taking a sip thinking it was tea.
Oh gosh.
And then like finding beers randomly sitting around and just taking sips just because that's what I saw like modeled in front of me, I guess. I didn't like start heavily using like on a regular basis until I was about 15, 16, and then it just progressed from there.
Did you grow up seeing much of that as
Yes,
well? Okay.
I did. Just the alcohol.
Yeah. So you both saw it around then in the house. What do you guys think the difference was? Why did you go on down towards more?
Well, okay, so I believe in like the disease concept and the fact that like part of it is genetic, and so like some people are predisposed genetically to become more addicted or have more compulsive behaviors than somebody else. I was reading the other day, it's like like your genetic makeup, there's no certain DNA that says he's going to be 5'7", or she's going to have, you know, it's more or less, you can have the same genes or come from the same family, but depending on the DNA, it might affect you differently.
Mm-hmm.
And see, my outlook is it's a choice you make. I mean, you can. I feel like you have control over, because I was raised, with alcohol being in the family, and I didn't become an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I had my drinking days, but never became an alcoholic and had to depend on it. I was actually the one that liked to watch everybody else make fools out of themselves. I mean, if it was in my genes, then I would still be. I feel like I would have been worse off than the things that I did do. So,
was there a time when you chose to start using heavier?
I made a conscious decision to try things for the first time or to do them in the beginning, but then it's I don't know, it's I lost my control of my own self-will, and it's it almost just took over me. As far as mental obsession, and then my body getting physically dependent on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that first few times of using, definitely it was a conscious decision.
But since then, things have turned around.
I've been clean in a couple weeks. I'll have 3.5 years. Yeah, it's been a minute.
good job.
Thanks.
That's really cool. Yeah.
But I used for about a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, from when I was 15. Well, I started using when I was 15, and then it just progressed until the Commonwealth of Kentucky decided I needed help.
Yeah.
So I know I had gotten to a point to where death was that's a cool option for me, and I looked like it.
You said death was a cool option for you.
Yeah, it was just whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Had no will to live. Hated myself. It was a very, very, very dark place. My family was, I guess, discussing Casey's Law. And my opinion of it's changed over time, of course, since I've been clean. But at that point, I didn't need help. That was my thinking. It's I don't have a drug problem. I've got a drug solution. Y'all are the one with the problem.
And I have worked with actually Janelle with in the Casey's Law with Spark and all that stuff. I've been a part of that, and I knew how it all went down. But I knew in my mind that it was a decision that if he wasn't ready. And, of course, he was making threats if we did do Casey's Law, things that he was going to do to us. So, it kind of made it even more.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't threaten to kill us or anything like that, but he was going to burn our house down and all that good stuff if we did Casey's Law on him. So, and coming from, I've had
You're
it.
laughing at that.
Yeah, I'm laughing at it now because I'm just oh, my gosh. I was out there. I was delusional. I had everything just messed up. And I ended up catching charges, and they had court-ordered me to go to treatment, I guess, because they're trying to do that instead of throwing people in jail. So my family didn't have to get me the Casey's Law.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing, yeah.
I've had previous experiences, with the anger issues from trying to help drug addicts, so I know kind of where you have to be at, and I do know that they have to be willing to want the help in order for you to actually, for it to be productive.
I can remember a time when I'd had enough pain, and I was tired of being a slave to the drugs, and I wanted to quit. I just didn't know how.
Yeah.
So when they offered me treatment, I was yeah, I'll do it. Anything so I don't have to sit in jail.
And did it feel like you guys were being nosy with pushing for the treatment, or did it feel more like you guys were trying to be helpful with it?
Well, in everybody else's eyes, they probably feel like they were trying to be helpful. I guess I was the one that was y'all crazy if y'all think that he's as innocent as what he thinks, you all think he is. And, I was kind of the one that was the pusher, he's got issues. Y'all need to quit feeding the habit, and you need to quit doing this, and you need to quit doing that, and y'all have got to stop giving money. You got to stop, because you're making it worse. Sometimes he probably could have strangled me, but for being the one that knew what was going on,
Right,
and
you
wanting
never
to tell everybody else.
you
what
never
was going on.
sugarcoated anything,
No,
because
never.
you care.
So Josh ended up getting into treatment, going through the program at Hickory Hill Recovery Center in Knott County, Kentucky. And the program worked for Josh, so let's get into what that was like for him.
They're under an umbrella by it's called Recovery Kentucky.
Okay.
And they've got facilities, like I think 7 men's facilities just scattered across the state.
So when you were going through the rehab then, how much family contact was there?
So like when I first got there, they limit you from contact as much as possible for like the first 30 days. Pretty much to kind of help the fog lift from your mind. And really, I mean, it's a time for not only us to like be comfortable and relaxed and feel safe, but it's a time for the family members to be like, okay, we know where he's at. He's in a good place. He's not on the run. We can finally breathe and get a night's rest.
Once he completed the the program, then he got to be a mentor and was still able to stay there until he figured out what he wanted to do and he can get back on his feet. And that's the part I liked about it, because you're just not straight out coming. And I mean, he knew that he couldn't come back here, so it gave him an opportunity to figure out what he was going to do up there. So I really liked that part, because they just don't like kick you out to the curb and say, there you go.
And throw you to the wolves.
Him staying away was probably, as bad as we hate it, that he's there half away, but that was probably the best decision.
So Josh has been living and working in Hazard, Kentucky, which is about an hour and a half away from Clay City, where he grew up. And one common thing you'll see time and time again with people who are in addiction is it's very important that they do get away from the place where they were in their addiction.
People ask me, why are you in Hazard? I'm like, well, it's a good place for me. It's a fresh start. So like I'd maybe been to Hazard once in my entire life previous to this, and it's become my like safe haven. And I tell locals that there, and they're just like, what? It's kind of like if somebody were here. I mean, it's just as bad here as it is in Hazard, as it is in Lexington. It's bad everywhere across the state, but to me, I don't know anybody there that I don't need to know. Yeah, it's evident, like I can see people at gas stations and whatever that are, I mean, clearly on something. But it's because, I don't know, I get to the county line and I see the Perry County sign and I'm like, it's just a safe place. Yeah.
If you go back to the same place you were before, it makes it like just all the doors stay open.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder to kind of keep those doors shut.
There's a lot of recovery in Hazard and around that area. Corbin, London, Prestonsburg, there's a lot of recovery. And so I just dove straight in. It was what was suggested if I wanted to stay clean. And I was like, yeah, I kind of like staying clean. It's pretty cool. I'm literally just an arm's reach away from going back to where I was at. So like it's a daily reprieve. I have to treat my disease daily, otherwise it just progressively gets worse. So I do meetings. I chair my home group. I've got a sponsor that has a sponsor that has a sponsor.
So in the world of recovery, a sponsor is somebody who is there for the person in recovery and is always available for them to talk to.
I work 12 steps. I pray, I have a God of my understanding, I meditate, I read literature, all those things that they taught me in treatment. They're like, there's these list of things that you need to do. And I'm like, done. Got it. I'm a list person.
Great.
Yes.
So is that a daily routine then?
Absolutely.
A daily thing. Wow, that's plenty for a day.
Yeah. On top of trying to like be a productive member of society and stuff. Yeah.
So how's that part of it going then?
Awesome. I've learned that like as long as I stay clean, everything works its way out.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, I have exactly what I need. I might not have what I want, but I have exactly what I need. People are like, what do you do for a living? I'm like, well, I stay clean.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh. I said, well, and for a job, I do hair.
Yeah.
But for a living, I stay clean.
So Josh has been cutting hair professionally then for a few years.
I enjoy it. I think that makes a world of difference too. It don't feel like I'm working. It just feels like I'm hanging out and...
Yeah, just talking, cutting, and getting people's hair shorter than it was before, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Do the conversations ever get into like anything like what our conversations got into there?
Absolutely. I think there's like two sides of the fence. I've got friends that they're like, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to acknowledge the fact that they were an active user and that they're in recovery now or whatever. And I'm just like full, like transparent. What you see, it's what you get. I would say 9 out of 10 of all my clients are affected by addiction some way or another. So I mean, usually it turns out to be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I connect on a different level with a lot of my clients, which I think regardless, this is going to sound horrible, regardless of what their hair looks like, I think a few of them, they could care less. It's more or less about just having that moment to kind of connect with somebody else that understands.
So if you look at Josh's whole journey so far, he's kind of come full circle with it. So he's been through the addiction, battled it, and overcame it. So now he's back on his own 2 feet, working a normal job, and using everyday opportunities to help share his story and help other people who are in his situation. He also now has a unique perspective looking back and seeing what got him to where he was. So how does it feel to be clean now? For over 3 years now,
It feels, I don't know, I feel alive. The morning that I was arrested, I can remember I was at a complete point of desperation. And I remember Kirk putting the handcuffs on me and setting me in the back seat of the cruiser, and as soon as he shut the door, it's like the biggest weight had been lifted off of me. Almost like, I don't know if you had mean cousins growing up, but that would like hold your head underwater and stuff. Until
Not
you...
much, no.
Okay, all right. Well, just imagine being underwater for a longer than a 10-second period of time, and then you finally like come up and you get that deep breath and you're like, oh, thank God. That's what I felt like when I sat down in the back of that cruiser. And from that point, I knew I wanted to do something different, and luckily just the seed of recovery was planted and it took off.
And coming from a family member of him being clean, it's nice to lay down at night knowing that he's not out there somewhere. We watched some crazy videos of some crazy things that, like just simple things like going to Natural Bridge and just jumping from one, and you're like, oh my gosh, what at that point you're like, what do you do? Because like he has no clue that how dangerous what he's doing right now, It's like these kids don't understand when, like I know I have mine that when she went through her teenage years, why do you have to know where I'm at all the time? I just like to know in case something happens. I like to know where you're at. It's not that I'm being nosy, wanting to know what you're doing. They didn't understand what we sit at home and worry about.
I didn't even comprehend, like I had an idea when I first got clean of how I thought it was only affecting me, but then I saw like the ripple effect of how it literally affects like a whole spider web of people. And I didn't feel that, like it didn't go from my head to my heart until the past 4 or 5 months. With the roommate that relapsed, we got clean together. So we've done recovery and life together for the last, up until that point, almost 3 years. And I felt like that was God being like, all right, here's a taste of what you put your family through. Because there was nights I would not sleep. Like it was awful. It was horrible. So I was like, oh my gosh, y'all went through this for how long?
Yeah,
Like,
a long time.
It was heartbreaking. So I mean, it's definitely humbling.
Yeah.
Definitely. I hated how I felt in regards to not knowing about a person I care about, or wondering if I was going to get the phone call if he was dead or not.
So you have to imagine, if you're a family member in this situation and all the heartache that's involved with looking at this family member in addiction, how difficult it would be to restore that relationship and trust to where it was before.
Me and Josh had a mutual agreement along the way, because I just looked at him and I told him, I said, look, I'm never going to be able to fully trust you. Never will I ever be able to fully trust you again.
Yeah.
You know, and coming, you know, just watching him go through the steps, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, he's not clean.
Skeptical.
He's not clean. There's no way that, you know, there's no way that he's doing this. And, you know, and I just looked at him, I told you, I said, I'm never going to trust you again.
And when were you saying that to him?
This was probably after you'd been, I mean, this was during his recovery. And then it got to where I was like, okay, I'm at 99.9% can trust you. You know, staying in hazard, doing what he was doing and all that good stuff. And I'm like, okay, so maybe I'm at 99.9%. And then a couple months ago, when he admitted to something that I knew he had done previously when he was an addict, that's when I was like, okay, so maybe I can fully trust him again, because he had
Made an amends.
He made amends with something he had done, and I mean, it took this long, and he finally made amends, fixed it, made it right, and I'm like, okay, I'm at the point now where maybe I can 100% trust that he is who he needs to be and where he needs to be at. Yeah, but it's hard as a family member. And that trust just goes out. It just goes out the window.
When I first got clean, I wanted everybody to be like, yeah, he's clean, he's doing it, and we trust you 100% again, and like, it's gonna go back to the way things were. And then I was quickly reminded that I didn't destroy all those relationships in a course of 30 days. So why should I expect to have it all back in 30 days?
So in Josh's effort to restore those relationships, he was using the 12-step process. But while he was going through that process, he dug a little bit deeper and uncovered some new things.
This is my third cycle of going through the steps.
Okay.
Because even, like I said earlier, I mean, you take the drugs out of the equation, I still have a Josh problem. I'm still making mistakes clean. I just don't have the drugs to justify and put the blame on anymore. Now it's like, oh my gosh, I made a conscious decision to lie to that person, or to not wear my seatbelt, or to just little things like that as far as breaking rules. And I'm still human,
Yeah,
but I'm not
we all-
using today. It's a whole lot better than what it was. So I feel like once you take the drugs out of the equation, I've learned that I don't have a drug problem, I have a Josh problem.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So I've done a lot of work on getting to the root of why I used in the first place, and trying to just process through all that. And in the midst of it, I'm like, if I didn't get clean to be miserable. I didn't get clean just to be clean. Like, I want to live my life, and I want to be happy, and be able to like achieve my goals and stuff. So I feel like working a program's the only way to really have a quality of life worth living. Otherwise, I mean, you should, I don't want to say you should still be using, but like, what's the point in getting clean if you're just going to feel the same way you did whenever you were using?
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
You mentioned that you took the time to look and see like your motives for using.
Yes. Yeah.
Would you mind sharing that?
I don't mind. Really, so like it stems from trauma.
Okay.
Just early on, I've learned that at one point in time, control and power was taken from me. So I've sought my entire life for situations in which I can have control or power. Like previous to drugs, I had an eating disorder. Previous to that, I can remember being a kid and being like, gosh, the wrong family took me home from the hospital. I'm not supposed to be on Jones Road. I'm supposed to be in a mansion, that big mansion on the way to Lexington with the nice,
that big mansion.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. I'm like, I'm supposed to be there with the in-ground pool. These aren't my people.
Yeah.
So, like, I can remember always just not being okay with me from an early age whenever all that happened. So, eventually, drugs, I thought I had power and control over it, and it turns out I'm pretty powerless over drugs and alcohol.
So calling back to earlier in the conversation, they had mentioned that Josh had gotten to serve as a mentor after he finished the rehab program, but before leaving the facilities.
Yeah. So
was that almost as much for yourself as for the person you were mentoring?
Oh, gosh, yeah. It's more of like a selfish act for me because I get more out of helping somebody, regardless of if they get any help from what I have to say or my experience. It helps me to just kind of, I don't know, get outside of myself or get my thoughts out there. But I don't know. I still feel like to this day, I can't help anybody. But then I'm like constantly reminded your vision of hope.
It seems like you going on and just like living your life, making sure that you're taking the right steps for you, like that's a good way to approach it, it seems like, and like that's at the very least a picture of what a lot of people can do and it can at least strive to do.
You would never know looking at me that I've got 3.5 years clean and that it's possible and that you can actually recover.
Miss Ronna, do you have anything you could say to like families that could be going through the same thing?
Sure. And I know there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them out there. All I can say is just love them. Get them, and like I said before, you can't hardly get them help unless they're willing to, want the help. I mean, I love them, be there for them, show them the support that they need. Don't walk away from them, because they need you. And I know you go through hard times. I mean, they make you want to hate them. They make you want to turn away from them. You got to have that tough love and just mainly just let them know that you're there for them. Don't feed the habit. That's my big thing. Don't feed it. You got to have that tough love. And
well, thank you. Thank you. Do you have any words for families?
There's help out there.
Yeah.
There is a different way of life to anybody listening that might be struggling with addiction right now. There is a different way that you can live. You don't have to use any more. Today can be your last day. You just gotta use the tools that they're given to you.
So that's all the time that we have today. I would like to thank WSKV for broadcasting this. I would also like to thank the Powell County Health Department for helping to make this actually happen. But most of all, I would like to thank Ronna and Josh for coming onto the show and being vulnerable and sharing their story with us. I really believe that if we're going to make any kind of lasting difference with drug addiction in this community, then we have to start with understanding it better. So that's what we're trying to do at the Local Lens. Once again, this is a project of Powell County Cares. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I'm your host, Nate Brooks. This is the Local Lens. We'll see you next time.